This video is actually about the Sword of Kaigen. I read this the past 2 weeks. Just for anyone watching, this book, and I'll do a spoiler-free review first. This book actually does contain a lot of different types of abuse. So if you feel like you can be triggered by something like that, I mean, I'm not going to go into depth about it, but just so you know, in the book, a lot of these things happen. Just to get in spoiler-free, this book has probably been the book that has affected me emotionally the most out of anything I've read. The characters have such a way of becoming real to you, and you get so close to them. And when you see them getting hurt or going through any sort of traumatic experience, it affects you so much more than I think any other book I've ever read. I think up until halfway through this book, I was sure this book will be my favorite standalone book of all time, because at that point I loved the characters so much, and I brought me almost to tears. And yeah, I think if the book ended shortly after the climax or the pivotal point, I'd say, halfway through, then I would have rated this book probably a 5 out of 5. But because it continued, and the second half, I want to say it moves towards a completely different part of the story without giving spoilers. And it was an amazing journey, the second part as well. I just think the first part and midway, it impacted me so much. And the second half's impact, I think, could have happened in a shorter page count. As I'm editing this video right now, I'm realizing I ranted so much about how the book made me feel and the emotions you experience and how much you love the characters. But I never mentioned in this section of the video, like, why you would like the book other than the emotions it makes you feel and other than getting attached to the characters. If you at all liked Avatar: The Last Airbender, this would have a lot of similar attributes just for an adult. It has some awesome, epic fight scenes with what I think of as bending. I don't know what they call it in the book again, but it's basically bending, you know? It has fight scenes with bending, with katanas, the samurai sword. I don't know if I'm saying that right, pronouncing that right. And yeah, so it has got fantastic choreography. How do you explain choreography when it's written down in a book? Like, when you picture it, how it's written, the fight scenes are written so beautifully, you can almost see the choreography playing out in front of you, and it looks beautiful. Does that make sense at all? If you an absolute plot-driven reader, I mean, if this book wouldn't work if it wasn't for the plot as well. Characters wouldn't have developed if a lot of the plot didn't happen. But if you are like, it has to be the best plot you've ever seen, okay, maybe it's not the best plot you'll ever read. But I think the combination of the plot with the fantastic, phenomenal characters that has been written, I think it's still worth the read, even if you would call yourself a plot-driven reader. So if you're still here, I'm going into spoilers now. Mimoru, like, what a character. I was so attached to him. I loved seeing him grow and him finding different way of thinking about things and almost breaking out of their traditional rigid system. Not that I'm anti-traditional or whatever, it's just he started seeing all the propaganda appearing, and he started to realize also some things weren't completely right, how his father treated him. And I think I already knew once Misaki greeted him, before he had to go and protect and stand for the Sword of Kaigen and become the protector, I think I sort of knew he wasn't going to make it. But even though I knew, the way his death happens was so intense, and the way Misaki then mourns over him afterwards, and his father, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Takeru, the way they handle it afterwards is, I mean, it's gut-wrenching. There's so many parts in the book where I just wanted to almost scream. I first wanted to scream to be like, no, please don't let Misaki go and die trying to protect the village for almost what to me felt like a lost cause. It was going to be a lost cause, is what I thought. But I sort of knew it was going to happen. I didn't want it to happen, but then it did. Obviously, the points after that was difficult to read was Misaki, like, seeing his body and the way she mourns over him. And then when they take the bodies away, the amount of disrespect you feel and hatred you feel towards the military and how they're handling the situation. And you just think to yourself, your Takeru is going to fight these people because it's his son. They are disrespecting his body and spirit after death. Everything in their culture is about being a warrior, having your story told afterwards. If you died in battle, that's an honor for them. And if you're going to disrespect the dead and disrespect your warriors, that means your culture means nothing, or at least their culture wouldn't then mean anything. So I thought Takeru was going to do something, but obviously he's just so cold. I assumed he was going to probably turn into the antagonist of the whole story. Takeru is now just going with the propaganda and how they are being ruled and how they are basically dictated. Well, other than Mimoru forming his whispering blade, and it describes it uses part of his blood and part of the mist around him while his gut is basically hanging open from the wounds he's suffered. Just a quote from there. A decade later, 15-year-old Hiroshi would become the youngest swordsman ever to master the whispering blade. What the world would never know was that he was the second youngest. Oh, I mean, that hurt, because you want Mimoru to like reap the rewards and for the world to know that he is the youngest. And the fact that it just says, no, the world doesn't know, but Mimoru is actually the youngest, but the world wouldn't know and won't ever know. It hurts in a different way, that he's not getting that recognition. But yeah, the ending, as you all know, the Robin chapter at the end, I feel like if it were gonna be more like sequels to this book, then you could possibly include that chapter. And if it was gonna expand more and explore this story that Robin is going towards, then yeah, maybe you should include that final chapter and bring out the next book. And it goes, and then it follows sort of that plot line of what which Robin brings up, like the new gang that's sort of forming, having different, I want to say benders, I can't remember what they call them, but I just think of them as benders, a gang of different benders. And it would have been such a cool follow-up to have Misaki, Robin, and Takeru fighting against like this gang and this gang of benders for the next book or something, or taking forces up against the Empire maybe, but yeah, the fact that you know the book is a standalone and that chapter is there and it gives you information and you don't know what to do with it, yeah, that's what brought the rating down from 5 to 4.5. I can't end this video without speaking about Takeru and Misaki's duel. There's a quote here that I also wanted to say. The whispering blade met Misaki's obsidian sheath and sheared through it. Her eyes went wide and she smiled. Gods in the deep, she smiled. A raw, open smile, and it was the most beautiful thing in all the Duna. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, Duna. And later on, Takeru asks, "What are you?" And Misaki answers, "Something bigger than myself. I'm Matsuda Misaki," she said with pride and honesty. She never attached to those words before. "I'm your wife." And she attacked him. It's funny how throughout the story, Takeru refers to her, to Misaki, as "you're my wife." And here she says, "I'm your wife," but with obviously a completely different meaning. Their relationship is crazy. I understand like she forgives him at the end for things in the past. The one thing that unfortunately will never change is that Mimoru didn't see that part of his father. Maybe when his father like changed his heart and stopped being so cold and hiding his emotions and oppressing his emotions. Maybe after he did that and let go and allowed Mimoru's spirit to sort of move on, maybe then his spirit then knew. But it kind of still sucks knowing that Mimoru's life, he was never good enough for his father. And even in the end, his father didn't know he managed to withdraw the Whispering Blade, and just feels like he deserves so much better, Mimoru. And even after Takeru develops in a sort of good person, the trauma is still there. Like, Mimoru still experienced those things, and Misaki still experienced those things. It's good to see they are moving on from it, and he developed his character. And I mean, it's brilliant character development, but it does still feel, I still feel hurt for Mimoru, and also for Misaki, for what she had to go through for basically most of her adult life. Either way, I've been ranting about this for too long. Thank you for watching. I was gonna stretch during this video, but clearly didn't.